They had been having a few beers at the bar together, recounting old times when the call of nature caused them to line up at the same time, still deep in conversation. But Fred could hardly ignore the fact that Chaz was very well endowed. "I say, that's a remarkable donger you have there, old boy," Fred was prompted to remark. "Wasn't always that way," replied Chaz. "Medical science can do wonders with transplants these days," he said. "I got this done over in Harley Street, England. It cost $1,000, but as you can see, well worth every cent." Fred was very envious. In fact, he packed his bag that night and flew off to the old Dart first thing. It was a good 6 months later before he ran into his old cobber once again, and Fred could hardly wait to tell him that he had taken his advice and was well pleased with the result. "But Chaz, I will tell you something else," said Fred. "You were diddled. I got mine for $500, not $1,000. Chaz could hardly believe it. Same address on Harley Street, same doctor. Complaining that he had been ripped off, he asked Fred if he could take a look. Once more they lined up at the porcelain, and when Chaz took a peek over the partition, the worried frown that had creased his face disappeared. "No wonder," he laughed. "That's my old one." Monroe and his wife Martha went to the state fair every year. Every year Monroe would say, "Martha, I'd like to ride in that airplane." And every year Martha would say, "I know, Monroe, but that airplane ride costs $10, and $10 is $10. This one year, Monroe and Martha went to the fair, and Monroe said, "Martha, I'm 71 years old. If I don't ride that airplane this year, I may never get another chance." Martha replied, "Monroe, that airplane ride costs $10, and $10 is $10. The pilot overheard them and said, "Folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take you both up for a ride. If you can stay quiet for the entire ride and not say one word, I won't charge you. But if you say one word, it's $10. Monroe and Martha agreed, and up they went. The pilot does all kinds of twists and turns, rolls and dives, but not a word is heard. He does all his tricks over again, but still not a word. They land, and the pilot turns to Monroe. "By golly, I did everything I could think of to get you to yell out, but you didn't." Monroe replied, "Well, I was going to say something when Martha fell out, but $10 is $10. An elderly couple were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so they decided to return to the little town where they first met. They sat in a small coffee shop in the town and were telling the waitress about their love for each other and how they met at this same spot. Sitting next to them was the local cop, and he smiled as the old couple spoke. After the waitress left the table, the old man said to his wife, "Remember the first time we made love? It was up in that field across the road, when I put you against the fence. Why don't we do it again for old time's sake?" The wife giggled like crazy and said, "Sure, why not?" So off they went out the door and across to the field. The cop smiled to himself, thinking how romantic this was, and decided he better keep an eye on the couple so they didn't run into any harm. The old couple walked to the field, and as they approached the fence, they began to undress. The old man picked up his wife when they were naked and leaned her against the fence. The cop was watching from the bushes and was surprised at what he saw. With the vitality of youth, the wife bounced up and down excitedly, while the husband thrashed around like a wild man, and then they both fell to the ground in exhaustion. Eventually, they stood up, shook themselves, and got dressed. As they walked back towards the road, the cop stepped from his hiding spot and said, "That is the most wonderful lovemaking I have ever seen. You must have been a wild couple when you were young." "Not really," said the old man. "When we were young, that fence wasn't electric." An airline introduced a special package for businessmen. Buy your ticket and get your wife's ticket free. After great success, the company sent letters to all the wives asking how the trip was. 72% of them gave the same reply. What trip? New SIM to surprise her husband. A woman buys a new SIM card, puts it in her phone, and decides to surprise her husband, who is seated on the couch in the living room. She goes to the kitchen and calls her husband with the new number. "Hello, darling." The husband responds in a low tone. "Let me call you back later." "Honey, my wife is in the kitchen. Cool message by a wife. Dear mother-in-law, don't teach me how to handle my children. I'm living with one of yours, and he needs a lot of improvement." Throwing knives at wife's picture. A husband was throwing knives at his wife's picture. All the knives were missing the target. Suddenly, he received a call from her. "Hi, what are you doing?" His honest reply, "Missing you." Habit of talking in sleep. A lady said to a doctor, "My husband has a habit of talking in his sleep. What should I give him to cure it?" The doctor replied, "Give him an opportunity to speak when he is awake." Natural disasters just happen. Nobody teaches volcanoes to erupt, tsunamis to devastate, hurricanes to swirl around, and no one teaches a man how to choose a wife. Natural disasters just happen. Your husband needs rest. Doctor, madam, your husband needs rest and peace, so here are some sleeping pills. Wife, doc, when should I give them to him? Doctor, they are for you. Once upon a time, there lived a king who had the most beautiful daughter, but there was a problem. Everything the princess touched would melt, no matter what. Metal, wood, stone, anything she touched would melt. Because of this, men were afraid of her. Nobody would dare marry her. The king despaired. What could he do to help his daughter? He consulted his wizards and magicians. One wizard told the king, "If your daughter touches one thing that does not melt in her hands, she will be cured." The king was overjoyed and came up with a plan. The next day he held a competition. Any man that could bring his daughter an object that would not melt would marry her and inherit the king's wealth. 3 young princes took up the challenge. The first brought a sword of the finest steel. But alas, when the princess touched it, it melted. The prince went away sadly. The second prince brought diamonds. He thought diamonds were the hardest substance in the world and would not melt. But alas, once the princess touched them, they melted. He too was sent away disappointed. The third prince approached. He told the princess, "Put your hand in my pocket and feel what is in there." The princess did as she was told, though she turned red. She felt something very hard. She held it in her hand, and it did not melt. The king was overjoyed. Everybody in the kingdom was overjoyed. And the prince married the princess, and they both lived happily ever after. Question: what was in the prince's pants? M&Ms, of course. They melt in your mouth, not in your hand. A struggling farmer named Joe had 5 female goats. Times were tough, feed prices were up, and he needed a plan. At the county fair, Joe met another farmer named Earl who had 5 male goats. Over a greasy corn dog and handshake, they made a deal. Let the goats get to know each other and split any future kids 50/50ths. But here was the challenge. Joe and Earl lived 60 miles apart, and neither had a trailer, so they agreed to meet halfway each time, 30 miles each, in an open field to let nature do its thing. The next morning, Joe woke up at 5 a.m., loaded his girls into his old rattling pickup, and met Earl. As the goats did their business, Joe asked, "So, how do I know if it worked?" Earl scratched his head and said, "Simple. If tomorrow morning they're lying in the grass, pregnant. If they're running through the mud, nope." The next morning, Joe looked out the window. Sure enough, goats in the mud. Disappointed but determined, he hosed them down, packed them up, and drove them out again, and again and again. 8 mornings, same routine, same muddy goats. By day 9, Joe was exhausted. He couldn't drag himself out of bed. He called out to his wife, "Sweetheart, can you check outside and tell me if the goats are in the mud or the grass?" She looked out the window and shouted, "Neither! They're already in the truck, and one's honking the horn like they're late." A man sat on the edge of the bed, watching his wife admire herself in the mirror. Her birthday was just around the corner, so he asked gently, "What would you like this year, honey?" Without missing a beat, she said, "I wish I was 8 again." The next morning, he sprang into action. He made her a giant bowl of chocolate cereal, just like kids eat. Then he whisked her off to the wildest amusement park in town. Every ride, she rode it. Twice. The Loop of Doom, the Gut Twister, the Mega Scream, all of them. After 5 hours of whiplash and motion sickness, he treated her to McDonald's, a Happy Meal, a chocolate shake, the works. Still not done, he surprised her with movie tickets to the loudest superhero blockbuster in theaters. Popcorn, soda, M&Ms, everything a sugar-crazed 8-year-old could want. By the end of the day, she could barely walk. She flopped onto the bed like a jellyfish in heels. With a proud smile, he leaned in and said, "So, did you enjoy being 8 again?" She opened one eye, groaned, and muttered, "I meant my dress size, you goofball." Grandma Jenny wanted a loan for $500. She approached her local banker. The banker pulled out the loan application, asking, "What have you got for collateral?" queried the banker, going strictly by the book. "Don't know what collateral means." "Well, that's something of value that would cover the cost of the loan." "Have you got any vehicles?" "Yes. I have a 1949 Chevy pickup." The banker shook his head. "How about livestock?" "Yes, I have a horse." "How old is it?" "I don't know. It has no teeth." Finally, the banker decided to make the $500 loan. Several weeks later, Jenny was back in the bank. She pulled out a roll of bills. "Here's the money to pay the loan," she said, handing over the entire amount, including interest. "What are you going to do with the rest of that money?" "Put it in my pocket." "Why don't you deposit it in my bank?" he asked. "I don't know what deposit means." "Well, you put the money in our bank, and we take care of it for you. When you want to use it, you can withdraw it." Grandma Jenny leaned across the desk, looking suspiciously at the banker, and asked, "What have you got for collateral?" "3 friends married women from different parts of the world. The first man married a Greek girl. He told her that she was to do the dishes and house cleaning. It took a couple of days, but on the 3rd day, he came home to see a clean house and dishes washed and put away. The second man married a Thai. He gave his wife orders that she was to do all the cleaning, dishes, and cooking. The first day, he didn't see any results, but the next day, he saw it was better. By the 3rd day, he saw his house was clean, the dishes were done, and there was a huge dinner on the table. The 3rd man married a girl from Newfoundland, Canada. He ordered her to keep the house cleaned, dishes washed, lawn mowed, laundry washed, and hot meals on the table for every meal. He said the first day he didn't see anything, and the second day he didn't see anything either. But by the 3rd day, some of the swelling had gone down and he could see a little out of his left eye, and his arm was healed enough that he could fix himself a sandwich and load the dishwasher. He still has some difficulty when he pees. A lady goes to her priest one day and tells him, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know how to say one thing." "What do they say?" the priest inquired. "They say, 'Hi, we're hookers. Do you want to have some fun?'" "That's obscene!" the priest exclaimed. Then he thought for a moment. "You know," he said, "I may have a solution to your problem. I have 2 male talking parrots, which I have taught to pray and read the Bible. Bring your 2 parrots over to my house, and we'll put them in the cage with Francis and Job. My parrots can teach your parrots to praise and worship, and your parrots are sure to stop saying that phrase in no time." "Thank you," the woman responded. "This may very well be the solution." The next day, she brought her female parrots to the rectory. As the priest ushered her in, she saw that his 2 male parrots were inside their cage holding rosary beads and praying. Impressed, she walked over and placed her parrots in with them. After a few minutes, the female parrots cried out in unison, "Hi, we're hookers! Do you want to have some fun?" There was stunned silence. Shocked, one male parrot looked over at the other male parrot and said, "Put your rosary beads away, Frank. Our prayers have finally been answered." A down-and-out guy looking for work applied at a zoo. The zoo didn't have any openings, but the keeper offered the guy an unusual position. It seems that the zoo's star gorilla had died suddenly, and since it was the main attraction, the zoo didn't want to release the information until a new gorilla had been procured. So the zoo offered the guy a temporary job as a gorilla, in a costume, of course, just until they could get a replacement animal. The man spent a full day getting used to his costume and learning how to act and how to move like a gorilla. The most important thing, his trainers said, is that you must never, ever break character. Nobody can ever know that you aren't the real gorilla. In the enclosure, the guy was fantastic. He mimicked the gorilla so well that nobody suspected a thing. One day he swung a little too high and went over the wall, landing in the lion's enclosure. With the large, ferocious beast stalking him and licking its chops, our gorilla guy frantically searched for an escape. He ran, and of course the lion immediately gave chase. Around and around they went, with the lion gaining ground, and finally the desperate gorilla, fearing for his life, decided to break character. So he shouted, "Help! Help!" Immediately behind him, he heard the lion growl, "Shut up! Do you want to get us both fired?" A young man starts his first day working at a hypermarket and is paired up with one of the store's top salesmen to learn the ropes. A customer walks in and asks for a packet of grass seed. The salesman smiles and says, "Of course, sir, but once that grass starts growing, you'll want a roller to keep it nice and flat." The customer nods. "Good point. I'll take one. And to keep it looking pristine, you'll need a lawnmower." "Right again," says the customer. "Add that too. Then to make it the envy of your street, you'll want fertilizer, weed killer, and moss remover." "Sounds great. I'll take the lot." The customer leaves with over 200 pounds worth of goods, having come in for just 2 pounds worth of grass seed. The experienced salesman turns to the young lad and says, "That's how you upsell. Now your turn. Give it a go." A few minutes later, a man approaches the counter and asks for a box of tampons. Without missing a beat, the young lad says, "Would you like to buy a lawnmower and some weed killer as well?" The customer looks confused. "Why on earth would I want that?" The lad shrugs and says, "Well, your weekend's ruined. You might as well mow the lawn." A woman in a hot air balloon realized she was lost. She spotted a man in a boat below and lowered her altitude, then shouted to him, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man consulted his portable GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon, approximately 30 feet above a ground elevation of 2346 feet above sea level. You are at 31 degrees, 14.97 minutes north latitude and 100 degrees, 49.09 minutes west longitude." She rolled her eyes and said, "You must be a Republican." "Yes, I am," replied the man. "How did you know?" "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to do with your information, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help to me." The man smiled and responded, "You must be a Democrat." "I am," replied the balloonist. "How did you know?" "Well," said the man, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You've risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise that you have no idea how to keep, and you expect me to solve your problem. You're in exactly the same position you were before we met, but somehow now it's my fault." Several years ago, Andy was sentenced to prison. During his stay, he got along well with the guards and all his fellow inmates. The warden saw that deep down Andy was a good person and made arrangements for Andy to learn a trade while doing his time. After 3 years, Andy was recognized as one of the best carpenters in the local area. Often, he would be given a weekend pass to do odd jobs for the citizens of the community, and he always reported back to prison before Sunday night was over. The warden was thinking of remodeling his kitchen and, in fact, had done much of the work himself, but he lacked the skills to build a set of kitchen cupboards and a large countertop, which he had promised his wife. So he called Andy into his office and asked him to complete the job for him, but alas, Andy refused. He told the warden, "Gosh, I'd really like to help you, but counterfeiting is what got me into prison in the first place." A girl just turned 16 and she's a cutie, so her mother is worried for her that she might get pregnant or make other sexual mistakes. So she decides to talk to her daughter about sex and men, but she is a little nervous, as most parents are. Anyways, she knocks on her door and goes to sit on her bed beside her daughter, and she says nervously, "Now that you're 16, I want to talk to you about men and their sexual needs." The daughter gives a gentle smile and says, "Don't worry, Mom. Tell me what you want to know." 3 friends, a turtle, a mole, and a bear are drafted and have to join the army, but neither of them wants to go, so they need to provide medical proof of why they can't join. "It's easy for me," says the turtle. "I am slow." He enters the examination room, and when he comes out, he happily tells his friend that he is in fact too slow. "Well," says the mole next, "I am literally blind. How would they want me?" And he's right. He comes out a few minutes later and hugs his friends because he doesn't have to join the army because they don't need a blind mole. "Okay, guys," says the terrified bear. "Let's face it, I am one of the biggest and most dangerous animals. I am the perfect soldier." "I have an idea," says the turtle slowly. "The most dangerous part of you is your teeth. Without your teeth, you are not really dangerous, so if we just smash your teeth, they won't want you." Reluctantly, the bear agrees, and the three friends start smashing the bear's teeth. Without teeth, the bear enters the examination room, and after 10 minutes comes out again with a hanging head and sad face. "So you have to join the army?" the turtle asks carefully. The bear mumbles, "No, I'm too fat." Three friends, a turtle, a mole, and a bear are drafted and have to join the army, but neither of them wants to go, so they need to provide medical proof of why they can't join. "It's easy for me," says the turtle. "I am slow." He enters the examination room, and when he comes out, he happily tells his friend that he is in fact too slow. "Well," says the mole next, "I am literally blind. How would they want me?" And he's right. He comes out a few minutes later and hugs his friends because he doesn't have to join the army because they don't need a blind mole. "Okay, guys," says the terrified bear, "let's face it, I am one of the biggest and most dangerous animals. I am the perfect soldier." "I have an idea," says the turtle slowly. "The most dangerous part of you is your teeth. Without your teeth, you are not really dangerous, so if we just smash your teeth, they won't want you." Reluctantly, the bear agrees, and the three friends start smashing the bear's teeth. Without teeth, the bear enters the examination room, and after 10 minutes comes out again with a hanging head and sad face. "So you have to join the army?" the turtle asks carefully. The bear mumbles, "No, I'm too fat." Three friends, a turtle, a mole, and a bear are drafted and have to join the army, but neither of them wants to go, so they need to provide medical proof of why they can't join. "It's easy for me," says the turtle. "I am slow." He enters the examination room, and when he comes out, he happily tells his friend that he is in fact too slow. "Well," says the mole next, "I am literally blind. How would they want me?" And he's right. He comes out a few minutes later and hugs his friends because he doesn't have to join the army because they don't need a blind mole. "Okay, guys," says the terrified bear, "let's face it, I am one of the biggest and most dangerous animals. I am the perfect soldier." "I have an idea," says the turtle slowly. "The most dangerous part of you is your teeth. Without your teeth, you are not really dangerous, so if we just smash your teeth, they won't want you." Reluctantly, the bear agrees, and the three friends start smashing the bear's teeth. Without teeth, the bear enters the examination room, and after 10 minutes comes out again with a hanging head and sad face. "So you have to join the army?" the turtle asks carefully. The bear mumbles, "No, I'm too fat." Two old friends were just about to tee off at the first hole of their local golf course when a guy carrying a golf bag called out to them. "Do you mind if I join you? My partner didn't show up." "Sure," they said. "You're welcome." So they started playing and enjoyed the game and the company of the newcomer. Partway around the course, one of the friends asked the newcomer, "What do you do for a living?" "I'm an assassin, a hitman," was the reply. "You're joking," was the response. "No, I'm not," he said, reaching into his golf bag and pulling out a beautiful Martini sniper's rifle with a large telescopic sight. "Here are my tools." "That's a beautiful telescopic sight," said the other friend. "Can I take a look? I think I might be able to see my house from here." So he picked up the rifle and looked through the sight in the direction of his house. "Yeah, I can see my house all right. This sight is fantastic. I can see right in the window. Wow, I can see my wife in the bedroom. Ha ha, I can see she's naked. Wait a minute, that's my neighbor in there with her. He's naked too." He turned to the hitman. "How much do you charge for a hit?" "I'll do a flat rate for you, $1,000 every time I pull the trigger. Can you do two for me now?" "Sure, what do you want?" "First, shoot my wife. She's always been mouthy, so shoot her in the mouth. Then the neighbor, he's a friend of mine, so just shoot his dick off to teach him a lesson." The hitman took the rifle and took aim, standing perfectly still for a few minutes. "Are you going to do it or not?" said the friend impatiently. "Just be patient," said the hitman calmly. "I think I can save you $1,000 here." Got an email today from a bored housewife, 32, looking for some action. I've sent her my ironing. That'll keep her busy. The wife's been hinting she wants something black and lacy for her birthday. So I've got her a pair of running shoes. Growing up with a dyslexic father had its advantages. Whenever he caught me swearing, he used to wash my mouth out with soup. My wife asked if she could have a little peace and quiet while she cooked dinner, so I took the batteries out of the smoke alarm. Anyone got an owner's manual for a wife? Mine's giving off a terrible whining noise. My wife apologized for the first time ever today. She said she's sorry she ever married me. My wife said I needed to be more in touch with my feminine side, so I crashed the car, burnt the dinner, and ignored her all day for no reason. Scientists have discovered a certain food that diminishes a woman's sex drive by 90%. It's called wedding cake. Things turned really ugly at my house last night. The wife removed her makeup. Murphy showed up at Mass one Sunday, and the priest almost fell down when he saw him. He'd never been to church in his life. After Mass, the priest caught up with him and said, "Murphy, I am so glad you decided to come to Mass. What made you come?" Murphy said, "I got to be honest with you, Father. A while back, I misplaced me hat, and I really, really love that hat. I know that McGlynn had a hat just like mine, and I knew he came to church every Sunday. I also knew that he had to take off his hat during Mass and figured he would leave it in the back of the church. So I was going to leave after communion and steal McGlynn's hat." The priest said, "Well, Murphy, I noticed that you didn't steal McGlynn's hat. What changed your mind?" Murphy replied, "Well, after I heard your sermon on the 10 Commandments, I decided that I didn't need to steal McGlynn's hat after all." With a tear in his eye, the priest gave Murphy a big smile and said, "After I talked about thou shalt not steal, you decided you would rather do without your hat than burn in hell." Murphy slowly shook his head. "No, Father. After you talked about thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my hat." 3 women and 3 men were traveling by train to a conference. At the station, the men each bought a ticket, but to their surprise, the women purchased only one. "How are 3 people going to travel on just one ticket?" one of the men asked. "Watch and learn," one of the women replied with a wink. Once on board, the men took their seats, while the 3 women crammed into a restroom and locked the door. When the conductor came through checking tickets, he knocked on the restroom door and called, "Ticket, please." A hand slipped out holding a single ticket. The conductor took it and moved on. The men were impressed. "Genius," they whispered. On the way back, the men decided to copy the trick and bought just one ticket. But to their shock, the women didn't buy any tickets. "Wait, how are you going to travel without a ticket?" one of the men asked. The women just smirked. Watch and learn. As soon as the train departed, the men rushed into a restroom and locked the door. The women crammed into another one nearby. A moment later, one of the women slipped out, walked over to the men's restroom, knocked on the door, and whispered, "Ticket, please." For years, 4 guys have been going on the same annual fishing trip. A few days before their departure, John's wife puts her foot down. "That's it, John. You're not going this year." His buddies are disappointed, but what can they do? 2 days later, the 3 arrive at the campsite, only to find John already there. His tent is set up, firewood stacked, dinner sizzling over the fire, and he's kicked back with a cold beer. "John, how the heck did you get here? And how did you convince your wife to let you go?" John takes a sip of his beer and grins. "Well, last night I was just sitting in my recliner when my wife came up behind me, covered my eyes, and said, 'Guess who?' I pulled her hands away, and there she was, in a sexy nightie. She took my hand, led me to the bedroom, candles everywhere, rose petals on the bed. Looked like something straight out of a movie. Then I saw handcuffs and ropes laid out on the bed. She smiled and said, 'Tie me up and do whatever you want.'" John takes another sip. "So, here I am." A man meets a stunning woman at a bar. They hit it off, share some drinks, and eventually head back to her place. As she gives him a quick tour of her apartment, he notices something unusual. Her bedroom is packed with teddy bears. hundreds of small ones lined up neatly on the floor, a row of medium-sized ones sitting on a higher shelf, and massive, oversized bears proudly displayed on the very top shelf. He finds it a little odd, but hey, he's not about to let a weird decorating choice ruin his night. They start kissing, clothes fly off, and they spend an incredible night together. Afterward, as they lay in bed basking in the afterglow, he grins at her and asks, "So, how was it for you?" She stretches, yawns, and says, "Help yourself to any prize from the bottom shelf."